That was kind of the reoccurring theme throughout my career was like, once I got a little bit, then I realized like, oh, that wasn't enough and I needed more and I needed more. It almost like turned into this drug in a sense where I went to a tryout and then I was like, man, I'm better than these guys. Like tryout is not good enough.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Podcast, filled with marketing and leadership tips on launching and growing your business with your host, Diane Mora.
Today on the podcast, I'm happy to welcome former Minnesota Vikings safety Andrew Sendejo. Andrew has translated what he learned in the NFL into a successful brain health supplement business, Braintree Nutrition. But for anyone who follows football, you know the risks of head injuries to players. So this seems like the perfect transition. We're about to unpack how it all happened and what Andrew has learned as an investor, entrepreneur, and an early stage startup coach. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Great. Love your background, by the way. Very cool.
Very much.
For those of you who are listening, Andrew has a beautiful living wall behind him with supplements. So I'm sure we'll learn more about that. But let's start with your backstory. I know that your sports history didn't start with football. What brought you into sports?
Always have been into exercise, fitness. I think even from a young kid, my parents probably knew that, I was going to be an athlete of some sort, just always asking for training equipment or asking my parents to, hey, like I need you to mark off a mile in the neighborhood so I can time myself in the mile. Or I asked my dad to build me a pull-up bar. I needed a soccer goal, or, I was always just demanding all these different kind of ridiculous items I needed to train. And I was a soccer player growing up. I tried to play every sport, but soccer and football overlapped in Texas. So I wasn't able to actually play football until I got to middle school, where I could play for the school, and then I could go play club soccer after that. And growing up in South Texas, you naturally don't have a choice but to at least try out for football or go out to a practice at least at one point. And I'd always been kind of eager. I was always kind of an aggressive soccer player, aggressive basketball player. I was in competitive martial arts, was also aggressive there. And so it kind of intrigued me. So got roped into football, and probably since seventh grade on, football just took over my entire life. Where I grew up, I went to your typical Friday Night Lights type high school where, out in Texas, big 5A football, the whole city's there, big crowds. When you're growing up watching these guys play, they're kind of like rock stars, and you kind of idolize these guys. And I think at that point, once I kind of got into high school, I realized that was my way out, to get to having a full scholarship to pay for college, to get to a prestigious university like Rice University, and to, change my life and, the future for myself. And so football, just kind of took over from an early age. And that's how, I kind of got to where I'm at now. So I feel like I can keep rambling on. I can talk about football all day and go all the way to college, to NFL, to everything.
Well, let's talk about like key transitions. So when you went from high school to playing college ball, obviously it sounds like you were at a big high school, but what was that like, that transition of football becoming, now it's you've got a little taste of it potentially being a future career?
So I think, for me, I was really focused more on the academics. I was like, okay, if I can get a full scholarship, I can pay for school. Like I want to go to a good school. And in Texas, I don't know if they still have this rule, but if you're in the top 10% of your class, you could automatically get admitted into any public school in Texas. So that was kind of my first checkbox was, hey, I need to be in the top 10% of my class so that I can at least get into these schools. I definitely can't afford them. So that was like the next step after that was like, okay, now let's get a scholarship. And so that was kind of my whole focus all throughout high school was like, make the grades, play good ball, get a scholarship. That was literally all I cared about, and I was just thankful that, my mom was very adamant about that and making sure she spoke with the counselor and didn't let me kind of do, the senior slide where you take a bunch of easy classes. So I still had some AP classes in my senior year, but, going into college, I think I wasn't even sure that I was only a 2-star recruit. So I wasn't even sure that going to a Division 1A school was kind of within my reach. I figured I would probably go to like a Division II, 1AA type school. I'll kind of bring that back later as far as like, being confident. But the transition, going to like a smaller private school, although it was Division 1A, the crowds at our Rice games were not very large. They were like just barely larger than my high school games.
Really?
And so I think I was already used to playing, several games. Most high school seasons are 10 games. I was used to playing 14, 15, 16 games because we would go pretty far in the playoffs as a high school team. So going to college and, kind of playing later into the year and playing in bowl games, I was kind of used to playing all the way through December. So I was kind of, I was ready for that. But obviously you go in as a true freshman. I ended up starting as a true freshman, and I'm playing against, kind of grown men. And so it was very terrifying right away. And then you start to realize that you are, even though you're younger, that you still, you can still play with all the upperclassmen and all the seniors and the guys that are about to go to the NFL. And that kind of just gives you more confidence the more that you're out there.
So what, I know when we were talking earlier, the idea of kind of mental focus and how you have to put yourself in the right mindset. So you're out there, and I mean, you see like some of the difference in the size of, I mean, sometimes it's between teams. There's, a lot of guys out there in the field that are like refrigerators, and then you're coming in as a true freshman. So, what sort of preparation do you have to do for a game at that stage in your career?
Gosh, just hope and pray, and just like they,
Please don't kill me today.
basically, I think I compare it to how you prepare in the NFL, and it's just night and day different because your first year of college, especially your first semester, not only is football season in the fall, but it's your first full semester as a college student. So you're kind of taking in all that all at once. And I know for sure I was overwhelmed, and I even had a point where I was like, I cannot wait to just like graduate and get a good job and start making money. Like I kind of just didn't really care about all the stressors and everything. It was just a lot. I think once I kind of got in the routine, kind of figured out school in a sense of like, my time management and just like how to manage class and how to, kind of utilize the resources we had as far as tutors and relying on upperclassmen and things like that. First semester was really rough. But was able to kind of adjust after that and kind of get used to it. But it was a lot all at once for sure.
Yeah, I can see that because it's a lot, I don't know that everyone really appreciates, like, when kids go off to college, my daughter's got just she's got a couple of years in, so I went through that experience recently. But when kids go off to college, it's a big change because for a lot of them, they're moving away from home for the first time. They're, living in a completely different environment. That, like, forget football, that in and of itself is a massive life change. And then I can imagine just the demands of college football and, the time demands, and then you're still trying to do well in school. I mean, that's a lot to have on the plate of a young man at that point.
I'll tell you, I did not do well my first semester in school. And so then the whole rest of my, academic career was just trying to, kind of play catch up. And once I kind of got figured out, I mean, I didn't fail. Obviously, you have to pass to play, but I wasn't doing as well as, what I'd hoped. And it was just, there was just a lot on the plate. And I think too, not only being a freshman, adjusting to the schedule of football, the schedule of class, but then also being a starter. So it wasn't like I was just on the team and having to do all those. Like I also was having to play, and the pressure of performing as a true freshman. So all that all kind of wrapped into once was, I think I was too young to even kind of realize like, man, this is a lot to manage. I was just like,
you look back and you were like, how the heck did I survive all that?
I didn't even know what stress was. I was just out there, hoping like, okay, like I have to, I just kind of kept it really in these kind of short stints of focus. Like, okay, like just get through like what we have today. Like I have to get through this, Earth Science 101 class, and then we'll work on, the next, you kind of do that with quarters and games, like you're like, hey, let's just focus on this play, this series, this quarter, and then go from there, as opposed to like, man, I have this class and then I got to get to this workout and then I have practice and then I have that paper tonight. You start to like overwhelm yourself. It's just kind of keeping it in these short little sprints of like, okay, like I'm just going to crush this and then repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And, it's funny because later in my career in the NFL, we had one of these like ultra marathon type guys that's like ran like 100 marathons in 100 days or just something insane that shouldn't even be done.
Humanly possible.
And that was like kind of his mindset of, of accomplishing that. He's like, I didn't really like think about like, man, I have 100 miles. He's like, I'm just going to handle like this quarter of a mile and then this next, or however he divvied it up, but like just in these short little strides. And so, I still kind of use that today as far as like, not letting all these things that you have to do get on your plate. It's like, all right, let's just handle this hour of the day. What do we have to do here? And then just live in these little moments.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. It's great skills. I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed with, I think the amount of information that we have on our plates today is just exponentially larger than what it was even a few years ago. But so you've got the stress of college ball, you're managing to keep it all together. You're, I assume things start turning around in school. And then did you know all the way through college that you wanted to play in the NFL, or was that a conscious decision at some point?
I grew up wanting to be a pro soccer player. So the fact that I was in college playing football, like I said, my whole thought process was like, hey, I have free school. Like that's all I cared about. I think coming out as a 2-star recruit, I didn't really think of myself as this like potential future NFL player. And even as I was playing, it's always hard to compare yourself to other players in your position around the NCAA. You're obviously able to compare yourself against your peers on your team, and like, okay, like I'm the best in my position on my team, but how does that compare to all the bigger schools? So that was kind of hard to know, like, am I actually good enough to play in the NFL? And so I think towards the end of my college career, when I started to have like 1 or 2 scouts kind of come out to my practice and I knew they were coming to watch me, I was like, oh shoot, like there's people actually.
That's real.
And then, you start to talk to a couple scouts that come in and like, hey, like, this is what the scouts will kind of tell you, like, this is kind of how this process goes. This is what you need to do. Cause you can't hire an agent at that point. And I didn't know anybody, and Rice really hadn't had that many guys go to the NFL that were close within age of me to like really, reach out to for advice. So the scouts kind of run you through it. They kind of tell you like, hey, like, y'all need to have a good season. Obviously, you have to play well. And they kind of, so then you start to get this confidence of like, okay, like there's people taking interest in me. And then your focus kind of shifts a little bit, especially going into your senior year, seeing that you're projected as like, an all conference player and things like that. And just the stats that I had, and kind of starting to, just use common sense of like, okay, like these are my stats. These are this guy's stats. He got drafted. You start to kind of do all that on the back end and think like, okay, this is actually a real goal that could be accomplished here. So like my senior year, that was kind of a lot of my process, my thought process was like, this is all about, the NFL. And even though that was my whole priority, I still did 2 job interviews, like in my spring semester, just in case, like,
you never know. You never know. And what were the jobs? Just curious.
One was with Accenture and one was with Deloitte for consulting.
Wow. Okay, that would have been a very different lifestyle.
Completely different. I don't even know how I ended up at these interviews, but I think we had another Rice alum there, and I think he, I don't know. I applied to a bunch of places, but they took an interview, so I figured I would go check it out. But yeah, I think, going into my spring semester, my senior year, I went full like football. Obviously I took those job interviews, but was like, okay, I'm doing the football thing. I had a season ending injury my senior year. So that really set me back as well. Trying to, I'm not sure if I would have ever got drafted anyways, had I played my whole senior year, but definitely would have had a lot better chance than if I got hurt. And so was kind of fighting that battle of like, not only am I kind of a lower tiered player, like coming in the draft, like now I'm an injured player. So there's a lot of things going against me when I went into it. And,
was your like mental state at that point, like, if it happens, it'd be great, but I'm afraid to wish for it? Or are you like visualizing it happening?
My thought process was, if I just get a workout with the team, like I would be happy. Like I was like, if the fact that someone was like, hey, we want to bring you in for a workout, I would have been like, shoot, that's a lot. Like I got to go get a workout with these guys. But that was kind of the reoccurring theme throughout my career, was like once I got a little bit, then I realized like, oh, that wasn't enough, and I needed more, and I needed more. And it almost like turned into this like drug in a sense, where I went to a tryout, and then I was like, man, like I'm better than these guys. Like this tryout is not good enough. Like I can see the guys that are out there on the field. And then, once I made the practice squad, kind of the same thing. I'm like, hey, these guys that are on the active roster that are actually playing, like, I know I'm better than these guys. And then once I was on the team, then I was just a special teams player. Same thing. I was like, man, I know I can be a starter. Like, I'm watching these guys that start around the league at safety, and like, I know I can play better than them. And then until I, became a starter in the NFL. And that's about where I tapped out my like God-given ability. And there was not much else I could do after that, where obviously like you still are like trying to achieve these goals, but there's just some things that you can only maximize what your like naturally born given ability allow you to do, and so I feel like that's where I kind of had this satisfaction of like, man, like I went way further than I thought, and I felt like I tapped out all the ability that was in my body that I was born with. I'm not going to be able to jump higher, run faster, get smarter. Like I kind of gave it all that I had. So that was gave me satisfaction
At
at the
least
end
that
of
must be a good feeling, knowing that, you left it all out there. It's not like, oh, if only I'd done this. You gave it what you had and you got what you could out of it, and then you moved on. But I mean, you were knocked out during the last play of your NFL career. What do you remember about waking up after that? Like, how much of a shock was it to learn that you might not play again?
that was my 12th season, and that was my second concussion of that year. And it was just a pretty violent the way it occurred. Contacted the other guy, I got hit in the side of the head. So I got knocked out like as I was running full speed. And then I did a nosedive, which a lot of times guys get concussions too, just from hitting their head on the ground, because the earth does not move very well. And so I kind of did this double whammy concussion. And so I don't remember much until I was kind of like in the locker room doing the concussion tests with the independent neurologist. Um, I remember that, and I just I had really bad vertigo, so I was just kind of scared because I didn't know, I'd never had vertigo before. So I went home and I laid down and I just started spinning really fast. And for a second, I thought I was dying. Like I thought maybe like some blood, like in the brain or something, had, I don't know, maybe there's some hemorrhaging or just something, one of those crazy accidents or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I dying? And then it stopped, and I was like, okay, I didn't die. And then I like texted the trainer, and I was like, hey, I just like got the spins really bad, like I don't know what that is, if and he was like, oh, that's vertigo, blah blah blah. But had a lot of memory, focus, brain fog issues. It was one of those things where you kind of just like, you saw the writing on the wall of like, okay, like I'm in my 12th year, I'm old, I'm the oldest guy on the team, have had two concussions. I just had a really bad concussion. After that, you're thinking about like, is it worth it to like even try to go back and play? Like, do people even want you? There's always this kind of mix of like, when you're done playing, it's like you're kind of calling it quits, while like also like your desire, like people desiring you to sign you as a free agent also kind of fades out at the same time. I feel like those kind of like worked at the exact same time, as far as like me kind of maxing out my career, and also team's interest in me as well kind of fading out all at the same time, to where it's kind of like not worth it to continue to work out and try different things. And even going into my 13th season, I did have a couple of coaches that were like, hey, like if we need a veteran, like we're gonna reach out to you. And you're kind of like, okay, sure, but you don't really like bank on it. And so I think it's, as far as when I came out of that play, I don't think I thought about this being my last play. But it sounds kind of backwards, but obviously I don't want to get knocked out, but the fact that my last play of my career was me like going as hard as I could to like win the game. It was like during a fourth quarter drive, like a 2-minute drive in the fourth quarter. And it was a very like crucial game at the end of the season. And so I also like get comfort of that, knowing like my last play wasn't me like getting burned or giving up a touchdown. It was like me like making a play and like going as hard
Really
as I
going for it. Yeah.
yeah, like, and like literally like almost killing myself. So I have satisfaction in that. So
Seems like
uh,
leaving it all out there is a bit of a pattern for you.
Yeah, yes, yes, it is.
So what was the process like for you to go from football to being, which really was your full-time job, to becoming an entrepreneur?
So I did take a little time after football to just kind of enjoy myself, do some things, and doing, Braintree. My co-founder, he was kind of running all the operations and doing a lot of the back of house work while I was, finishing up playing. And it really was, kind of almost like a investment that turned into a hobby that turned into like full-time passion. Like, this is what I'm doing now. And so I think when I was done, I would kind of pop in and kind of help out and, ideas and things like that, to where, I wanted to be more involved. I wanted to take the company in a different direction and like and so, like I said, it went from kind of being a hobby that I was invested into, like, I'm the face of this company now. And that, like, I'm going to take this thing and make it a brand that's recognizable and respected and a household name. And so that's kind of what my day-to-day has been like as of recently. But I think the transition is, the fact that you're used to being so busy all the time and you're just constantly working towards this goal. And there's a lot of stress and pressure and different things. And I think there's a lot of that goes into kind of what I'm doing now, as far as there's always work to be done. There's always something that you can be improving on. Just like in sports, there's always something you can be improving on, and I think being very critical of yourself, like in football, where you're always watching yourself and you're always trying to improve, is the same in business. And I think you just realize after football, there's a part of you that, you have to swallow your pride and stop worrying about what people think, because there is that transition of where, when you're playing football and you get introduced, or you're introducing and yourself and you're talking to people and they ask what you do and you say play football, you always get these big, oh, that's awesome, blah blah. And so I think what happens a lot of times is when guys transition into this next phase of their life, if they don't have this eye-opening job that just wows people, they kind of feel, they don't get the same reaction and feelings.
No adrenaline in that.
That. And so, I think part of the transition too is like realizing, like, I was lucky to have a job that gave me those really high highs, and to be able to even experience that versus never being able to experience it at all. And that I've already kind of accomplished something that was really special that I set out to do that most people don't get to do. And so I think not caring about what maybe people think also, like, has helped the transition of, oftentimes, like, I don't even bring up that I played football to someone because they say, like, oh, what do you do? And I think most people would be like, oh, I retired from football, but it's like, they didn't ask you what you used to do. They asked you what you do now.
Right.
So, like, that'd be like asking somebody like, oh, what do you do? And they like had maybe sold their company before, like, oh, well, I sold a company and now I do this. I'm like, well, I didn't ask you what you used to do. I asked you what you do now. So, I typically am just like, oh, I have a, brain health supplement company. And some people are really interested. Some people are like, oh, cool, and they don't really care. So it's like, if you say you play in the NFL, everyone's like, oh, that's awesome, blah, blah. Actually, half the time people didn't believe me when I would say it, because I was like just this like average looking white guy. So they're like, what are you, like, on the practice squad? Or are you like, I'm like, no, I'm like in my 12th season. I'm a starter, like, playing for a long time. So, I think the transition is, it's always something that's, discussed, because it is a difficult transition, because it's just like anything. Like, if you were in one job industry that took over your whole life from 7th grade until you were 34 years old, like, to transition it, like, even if it's not football, it could be anything. If you were just doing that for like almost it was your whole life, anybody would have a hard time kind of transitioning into your next deal. So I think it's about finding something that's going to challenge you, that you're going to learn, that's going to kind of put you in your place and humble you, and something that you're passionate about and you like and you're interested in. And I think that's where, for me, I can sit here and read studies about, different ingredients and different studies about the brain and just about the body and everything. I can read those all night. I have a hard time reading other books with my, like, ADHD kind of kicks in a little bit, but if you give me something about the brain or a study about something, I can read that for hours. So
And I
I think
mean,
that's
it's personal for you, obviously, because of what happened and what happened to your business partner. So, I mean, when you knowing that at the point that you decided that starting a brain health supplements company was your direction, what had to happen in order to launch your brand? Because launching a brand is, it's hard regardless. And, you weren't coming at it from a business background. So what did you do to launch the company?
a lot of the launch was kind of like I always say grip it and rip it, or you like ready, fire, aim type. We really made the products while we were playing for ourselves and for our teammates. We actually didn't really even think about. We knew obviously it was a business and we would eventually sell these products, but initially it was like, man, we don't have anything that we can take that doesn't have any banned substances, is transparent, and has efficacious ingredients that are backed by human clinical studies to help improve these areas of brain health for us and our teammates. And so we kind of took all these separate ingredients that we knew, and using our neurologists to kind of formulate different products, and really kind of made it for ourselves. And then, eventually kind of got to the point of like, okay, like let's get the website dialed in. Let's get all of the other like areas of e-commerce kind of dialed in. So the launch was, kind of a just like throw it together kind of like launch. There was not really like even
Organic, it sounds like.
yeah, it was not really even take like really like taking it to market was not even kind of in the thought process initially. It was like we just need to sell these to our teammates and to like and for us.
Well, at that point in time, I think the awareness, I'm just sort of thinking back of when you were doing that, the awareness of, brain injuries in football was becoming more open. There was more discussion about it. So it
Mhm.
was something that obviously was a concern for you, was a concern for your fellow players. And here you were coming in with a solution to a known problem.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we banked it on. That's where our legs were in the company of like knowing that there weren't really products using these ingredients, these like really high-end expensive ingredients that have these human clinical studies on them. And if they were, they weren't using the correct dosages. So, being able to making products that were kind of ultra concentrated, that were these therapeutic dosages that we could use as players. And then our kind of snowball effect was like, well, if it's good enough for our brains that are getting hit in the head all the time, it's definitely good enough for the general consumer brain. And so I think my first year being done, basically like all of 2023 was me kind of redoing a lot of the company, like getting the labels better so that we could actually be in retail, getting the website kind of cleaned up, getting all the different ads and all the other things that you have to spend money on in this space, kind of getting all those different vendors is a process, as far as like going through somebody for a couple of months, finding a new person, or constantly interviewing new people that want to run your email marketing, your social media marketing, want to run your social media page. You have all these people all the time that want to run your, and obviously get paid by you to do work for you. So there's no shortage of vendors out there. It's just finding the right ones. And so learning that, learning and navigating all that, just in like a crash course in e-commerce and business, and redoing the company all like within 1 year. And really like 2024 is kind of the start of the first year we've kind of had all those pieces in place, and it kind of doing everything finally the correct way. And so now that allows me to be able to go on shows like this and to be able to do more of the CEO type activities. A lot of what I was doing in the past year and a half or so was just like working on the business.
You're
And
building a business. There's not really
yeah, like
a lot of
just
time to do much else. So
yeah, it was like you know and so you know it's been a fun, interesting grind of learning and navigating this whole business world.
No, it sounds like it. And one thing I find interesting is that you have built a company of vendors, as you mentioned. And what are some of the key success factors in making that model work?
It was a struggle for me because coming from the football background, we were so used to, your work was on display every day and it was getting critiqued by everybody. So like the GMs, the coaches, your peers, and if you messed up, you got exposed in front of everybody, and you often would get MF'd and yelled at and all these different things. Well, you can't do that in the business world. Not everyone operates like that. So was used to this kind of very strict, like, hey, like you didn't do this like the way you said you were, the way it was supposed to be done. And kind of realizing like, man, not everyone is a football player, and they're not used to that kind of like
They
strict,
don't take
tough.
criticism quite as well.
Yeah. I don't take it quite as well. And like, just kind of learning, just being able to you kind of use your awareness and knowing like what kind of person is this, like are they kind of like can they take the tough love, or are they kind of someone that needs more of like positive reinforcement? So I would say a lot of it early on was I was very kind of like hard nosed, like how I'm used to getting coached in football, and then kind of learning to kind of soften up and just really like kind of get to know the person first and kind of see how they operate, and then you kind of get to I feel like I can work with them better. But it's being successful there is just kind of um it's just having your benchmarks and having the goals you got to hit, and giving them the tools to succeed, just like a coach giving you the playbook and the plays to succeed. Even the best marketer in the world, or the best social media ad, or social, like all those people, even the best person in the world, if you gave them kind of crumbs, it's going to be hard for them to make it work. So it's partly on you as well to give them the pieces, and we're still always improving. Like I'll never be satisfied with anything. It's just the way that it has to be. So always looking to improve, always like evaluating and always critiquing. But at least, as of now, like have those people in place that are consistent enough on a regular basis to hit the goals that we need to hit right now.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And when I was, so you run an e-commerce business, and it's a successful one. And when I was speaking to you earlier, you mentioned that you don't like selling on Amazon. Clearly, they take a lot of fees, but it just seems like a lot of people just assume that to be in e-commerce, you have to be on Amazon, but you're arguing that that's not the case.
It is, I guess it makes it's easier to buy on Amazon. It's not easy to sell on Amazon unless you've been doing it for 10 years and you're kind of grandfathered in. We do have kind of like these like shell listings on Amazon. They kind of help with your SEO. And just because it could be something later down the road where if Amazon tightens up their regulations on supplementation, and there's actually like legitimate supplements on there, it'd be something we would be willing to kind of go back in. But I think for us, we like to, we have eyes on the entire process of our product, from sourcing the ingredients to manufacturing it to distributing it, from like labeling, like everything. We get to see it all in-house and get distributed in-house. And so that just ensures the quality of the product, the accuracy of the dosing, like where it's been versus, there's a lot of companies that they have everything made in China. It gets drop shipped straight to an Amazon warehouse, and the people who own the product that never even saw it, they don't even know what's in it. Versus us, we're there every step of the way, and we're also manufactured in an NSF, CGMP, and FDA registered laboratory. So that's just like the gold standard, the highest standards for manufacturing practices. And that just also ensures that all the batches are third-party tested. There's no banned substances anywhere in the entire lab. And so that's by any professional sports league. So it's just, for us wanting to make, a tier one, a higher end product, that's why we operate that way. And just, I think once you send it off to Amazon, you kind of don't know what's going on. And then you're in the same listing as a lot of these other products that are kind of lower tier, lower grade. They might look flashy and whatnot, but you don't actually know the quality of the product. And you know, from what I understand, Amazon is starting to get a little more strict on that. And so once they kind of put in that regulation, that might be something that we go do. But for now, we're not extremely focused on Amazon. But I will say it is definitely hard to get people to come. It's much harder to get people to come directly to your website than it is on Amazon, because there's obviously billions of people, maybe even trillions at this point on Amazon.
Very
So
true.
yeah.
Very true. Now, I've interviewed former NFL players on the podcast before, and one thing that always impresses me is the strength of your network, which is a wonderful way, obviously, especially because you all are influencers. So great way to gain visibility for a brand. So how did you engage the guys in launching your business?
I just texted him. I said, "Hey, buddy," I said, "I'm sending you some products." I said, "This is for, you know," and not every guy. And so that's also part of the Braintree story is, you know, me, my co-founder, we were both NFL. We were like the locker room nutritionists. So especially when it came to supplementation, so all the guys would ask us about different ingredients and, you know, what was banned, what was not. And so we kind of established ourselves as those roles within the locker room. And so whenever I reached out to these, you know, different players that I've played with, and I was like, "Hey, like this is my product," they're like, "Oh shoot, this like must be legit because you know, you've always been that guy, and it's safe." But you kind of have to just break it down for me, like, "Hey, man, this is going to help you with focus. This is going to help you with your memory for memorizing the playbook, and it's going to help with, you know, just all the hits to the head. And if you get concussions, like you should take this every day. But if you get any kind of like get your bell rung or your concussion, you should probably double the dose on this." And so that was a lot of it too. Just, you know, I have a list of just all the guys I've played with, can text, message, whatever, and just kind of reached out to them. I send them little care packages, little goodie packages every year. And if they ever do get, you know, some type of concussion or something like that, some of them will reach out to me and we'll just send it to them for free. You know, we don't really like, we're not really trying to utilize the fact that they have money and be like, "Hey, you should buy our stuff." We're like, no, like this is kind of for us. This is kind of why we made this. And so just try to do our part to help. But yeah, a lot of that was like, "Hey, you know, like you said, using your network, like, hey, I'm going to send this to you. We're sending you a care package. Like, you know, feel free to give us a shout on socials and different things, and like just support your brother." You know, because guys that are playing, they know that they'll eventually be where I'm at, and they're going to want to lean on guys that are still playing right now. And so it's just part of kind of that NFL brotherhood where you just try to help everybody out, however you can. You know, if there's a guy that's retired that needs help with something or vice versa, like we always just end up helping each other out because we know we're kind of all in the same kind of category, same boat.
Yeah, no, that's one. And for those of our listeners who may not have access to an NFL network, still you have your own network and you can still build your own network. And that's really a great way to launch and grow a business. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask and they're trying to do it all on their own. But it's, you know, it takes a village when you're building a business as well as raising
It
kids.
definitely does. You know, I've had another like teammate, and he was like, "Man, like I have this kind of business opportunity. I didn't want to like reach out because I don't like to bug you guys." And I was like, "Man, that's the exact opposite. We should be the first people you bug. Like
Yes.
your boys, like, you know, if there's anyone that's gonna, you know, whether it's invest or like listen, hear you out on this pitch or whatever it is, like it's us, you know." So, you know, I always think like those are you do have to kind of overcome that, like that feeling of, man, yeah, should I like text this guy or should I reach out? You eventually kind of become numb to that. You're like, I don't care. I'm sending it. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Worst they can say is no. Just that's it. You're not going to embarrass yourself. Just reach out and ask. I think that's it.
And
That's solid advice.
I don't always say the answer isn't no. It's just not right now.
Not
So
right now. Yeah, because maybe the need wasn't there. But so you've gone through a lot, you've learned a lot, you've had a lot of interesting life transitions, and you know, you've really kept that mental fortitude along the way. If you had the opportunity to look back and talk to high school you, or like what advice would you have loved to have received in high school based on what you've learned?
yeah, I would say, what I would tell my younger self is to play with confidence.
Hmm.
And I say that because when I was in high school, I was a two-star recruit. But had I known that I had the ability to go to a Division I college and be a four-year starter, I would have played with much more confidence in high school. Like I belong there. Like, hey, like I know I'm only a two-star, but I'm actually like Division I four-year starter material. And same with the NFL. While I was playing college, I was just out there, just, trying. I could compare myself to my peers, but again, like if I would have known, man, like I'm going to go on to play, obviously you don't, but, I have the ability to go play 12 years in the NFL. I would have walked out on the college field with so much more confidence. Like I belong there. Like, none of you other guys are even going to do what I'm going to do. And then again in the NFL, being at the highest level of professional sports, you're out there thinking, am I good enough to be out here? Like, do I belong here? And if I would have just known, like, hey, like you have the ability to play 12 years, to be a starter, to do all those things, I would have played with much more confidence. And so sometimes it's just, you don't, like, the ability is there. It's like you just need something or somebody or to kind of like bring it out and expose it and show you like it's been in there the whole time. You just didn't know you had it.
Yeah.
And I think that transitions to business, or at least I try to transition that same thought process to business now, of playing with confidence, of like, hey, like even if this business is young, or maybe there's times where you doubt it or you're questioning it, or is this going to work out, is playing the business game like this is a company that's going to exit for a ton of money one day, or that's going to have a high valuation, or whatever your goal is, and playing the business game day to day the same way. And I still have to remind myself that, even though I haven't been playing business my whole life, like I played football, but again, I would say play with confidence.
I love that. I think that's a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So completely tangential question, but I'm a big Michigan Wolverines fan, so you can probably anticipate my next question. I was excited that our quarterback, JJ McCarthy, did really well in the draft and got drafted by your former team, the Vikings. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it was a smart move. So, amongst the kind of the Vikings community, so to speak, now I'm just like, I'm with like the fans now, so I talked to, my soon to be mother-in-law is actually from Minnesota. So she's a Vikings fan. So we chat all the time. She's like, what are we going to do at quarterback? What are we going to do at quarterback? And I said, I have no idea, because like they didn't sign anyone in the off season. Like it's kind of, they don't have like one of the highest draft picks. And so I think when they made that draft pick, I think that was kind of their plan all along, is like, hey, we're going to find a way to move up in the draft and go get one of these like top tier guys. So, and getting a guy that's, I think he lost one college game or something.
We were undefeated this last season.
Right. But I think his whole career,
Oh,
I
in
think,
his full career, yeah, it's crazy. He is an
yeah.
amazing.
So like, to me, that's what I look at as a quarterback, is like, who is a winner? Like who has found a way to win games, and so I think they, made a good move there. And so that kind of, I think that brought, the Vikings community, a little, got them a little bit more excited for the season coming up.
That's good. Yeah, I think we're all excited to watch and see what our guys are going to do in the NFL. And
Yeah.
speaking of mental focus, he's someone who sits on the field and meditates before every game and is, very tries to calm himself and really just kind of focus. When you said, kind of one play at a time, I mean, that's what you have to do. And I think that's really good advice for business as well. So
Yeah.
So if our listeners are interested in either buying Braintree products or in contacting you directly, how can they reach out?
Yeah, you can find us at braintreenutrition.com. You can find us on socials at Take Braintree. you can find, I don't really use many of the socials except Instagram, but you can find me on the socials at andrew.sendejo. If you go to our website at braintreenutrition.com, we have all the studies as well. If you want to read through the studies that support kind of the ingredients of why we put them into our products. There's a little, video on the story of kind of like how it became, a little bit kind of like what we spoke about today, just a lot of repetitive TBIs and concussions and things like that. But yeah, you can find us all there. So go to braintreenutrition.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure. And for all of our listeners, play with confidence.